Today, we explore stratification theory and its relevance to community services in Australia. Stratification helps us understand why some groups consistently experience poverty, homelessness, health problems, and exclusion, while others accumulate advantage. As community service workers, we must look beyond individual behavior and examine how systems organize inequality. We will cover theory, Australian examples, applications in practice, and limitations. Social stratification refers to how societies rank people into layers. These layers affect income, education, housing, health, and political voice. Stratification is not random. It is reproduced over time through institutions such as schools, labor markets, and housing systems. In Australia, postcode often predicts opportunity more than talent. Example: a child growing up in eastern Adelaide typically has better school outcomes than a child in highly disadvantaged outer suburbs due to unequal infrastructure and services. Traditionally, stratification focused on occupation and income. During industrialization, class was linked to factory work, land ownership, and wages. Contemporary theory recognizes inequality as multidimensional. Education, wealth, ethnicity, gender, migration status, and cultural capital now shape opportunity. This shift helps community services respond more accurately to complex disadvantage. Example: two people may earn similar wages, but a migrant worker may face language barriers and discrimination that a local worker does not. Stratification operates through multiple dimensions. Wealth influences housing and health. Education affects employment access. Status and power shape voice in decision making. Cultural capital includes language, behavior, and social norms. Social networks open or close opportunities. Community service workers must assess all these layers when supporting clients. Example: a university graduate with no professional network may struggle more than a trade worker with strong community connections. Hierarchy means some people consistently access resources while others face barriers. These layers are maintained through education systems, labor markets, and housing policies. Movement is possible, but not equally accessible. Australian example: home ownership rates are significantly higher among higher income households, while low-income renters face instability and displacement. Stratification produces unequal access to essential services. Education quality differs by location. Health outcomes reflect income and housing conditions. Employment is increasingly casualized. Housing affordability pushes vulnerable families to the margins. Example: Aboriginal Australians experience significantly poorer health outcomes due to long-term structural disadvantage. Mobility is often restricted. Children born into poverty are more likely to remain disadvantaged. While success stories exist, they require exceptional resilience and support. Stratification theory warns us not to blame individuals for systemic barriers. Example: children from low-income families in Australia are statistically less likely to complete university than peers from affluent backgrounds. Stratification is not natural. It is constructed and reinforced. Schools reward middle-class norms, housing markets privilege wealth, media shapes stereotypes. Policies sometimes unintentionally reproduce inequality. For example, rental screening practices may exclude migrants due to language or documentation bias. Functional theory argues stratification motivates people to fill essential roles. Doctors earn more because training is long and responsibility high. However, this approach is criticized for ignoring unfair starting positions. An example is that Essential workers such as aged care staff are socially important yet underpaid, challenging functional explanations. Conflict theory views stratification as benefiting the powerful. The wealthy influence policies to protect resources and restrict others. Community services often work with people harmed by these structures. For example, housing investors benefit from tax policies, while renters face increasing insecurity. Interactionist theory focuses on everyday experiences. How people interpret their status affects confidence, behavior, and service engagement. Labeling can empower or stigmatize. As an example, clients labeled as welfare dependent may internalize shame and avoid seeking help. Stratification theory guides practice. We assess barriers, design targeted programs, advocate for reform, and challenge discrimination. Community workers move beyond crisis response towards structural change. Example: employment programs for Indigenous Australians addressing discrimination and skill gaps simultaneously. Min and Nguyen, a Vietnamese-Australian couple earning minimum wage, live in cramped, substandard housing. Their position at the bottom of Adelaide's residential hierarchy reflects both economic stratification, low wages, and discrimination, landlord reluctance to rent to non-native English speakers. Their children experience health problems from poor housing, and school attendance suffers as children help parents work additional shifts. Adelaide Housing Advocates uses stratification theory to understand these families' position. They face multiple overlapping barriers: class, ethnicity, language, reinforced by discrimination. Advocacy targets not just individual relief, rent assistance, but systemic change, increased public housing, legal action against discrimination, and policy reform to address Adelaide's affordability crisis. From this case, Min and Nguyen earn minimum wage and face discrimination in housing. Their children's health and schooling suffer. Stratification theory shows overlapping barriers: class, language, ethnicity. Intervention requires rent assistance, legal advocacy, and housing reform, not only counseling. Stratification theory explains inequality structurally and supports equity-based services. However, it can appear deterministic and overlook resilience and agency. Modern economies also blur class categories. Practitioners must balance structure with empowerment. Stratification theory reminds us that disadvantage is produced socially, not personally. Community service workers must design equitable programs, advocate for reform, and empower clients. Our role is not only to support individuals, but to challenge the systems shaping their lives.